Well, hi, everyone. This is Daniel Williams, Senior Editor at MGMA and host of the MGMA Insights podcast. We're joined in studio today by Deborah Fine. Now, Deborah is a renowned keynote speaker and expert in the art of small talk. She's even shared a book, The Fine Art of Small Talk. It's a revised and updated edition. And as a complete book nerd, it's also an autographed copy, so I will cherish this. Recently, Deborah kicked off the MGMA Financial Conference in San Diego. I had a front row seat, and I went, we got to get Deborah on the podcast. So without further ado, Deborah, welcome to the Insights podcast.
Thanks, Daniel. It's great to live in the same town as the headquarters for MGMA, which makes this, face to face. Who does that anymore?
I know. This is so cool.
I know, right? Yeah. I appreciate it, actually.
Yeah. So you are an expert in the fine art of small talk, but in your presentation and on your website, it points out you got your career start in engineering. So how did an engineer transform into this expert on small talk, a master of mingling? I saw as well on your website, all these cool things. How did this happen?
Well, in my case, I didn't know how to do it. I know that must sound ridiculous to your listening audience, but I'm an introvert. I'm still an introvert who behaves hopefully like an extrovert. But I was so bad at it, and that's why I chose engineering, was because my skills were, I was a straight A student, I was great at math, and I didn't like to really be with people. I didn't make friends. I was a loner. And I just assumed that people were born with that gift of gab, and then some of us weren't. And I thought we were in a minority. It turns out I was wrong about that, too. Wrong about many things. So at first, for many reasons in my life, I sort of tiptoed through learning by watching people like yourself, people at back to school night, at parties, at wherever, any occasion that I had, and tried to change my life. And I was driven to change my life because I just wanted friends, a social circle. Ultimately, I had an epiphany that it wasn't just engineers. I mean, I thought I was the only one standing in a room by myself with everyone's, I thought, staring at me because I had no one to talk to. I thought it was just dorky engineers like me. And it turns out I was not the only one standing there by myself. And when I realized that, I thought, well, maybe other people want to learn how to do this. And I thought it would just be engineers, but as you just mentioned, financial people who are far more glamorous than us engineers. But nonetheless, all kinds of people, fancy lawyers. Right. I could give you quite a list of people that want to improve their conversation skills.
Okay, so let me ask then, because I have had some social anxiety before, like leading up to a party. Like if I know, the reservation, we'll get the magnet out, we'll tape it onto the fridge, and I'll walk by it all week, and my stomach will kind of do a flip-flop every time I see it. What is it about these intimate little gatherings or just a casual networking event that makes people feel uncomfortable?
Well, I think more than anything, Daniel, it's our lack of control. So whether it's an industry conference, a meeting with colleagues and the boss is going to host it, or a cocktail party or a baby shower, you have complete control right now. You're going to at some point probably say, this is my last question. That means it's over. Whether I want it to be over with or not, it's going to be over. You're also, I'm guessing, prepared questions. Mm-hmm. You know exactly what you're doing. You do this all the time. You're skilled. You have an MBA, for goodness sake. I mean, so now put someone like yourself, highly educated, so well trained, and put us out for coffee to just chat and quote unquote maybe get to know each other, or be at an industry conference where I'm in a hospitality suite and there's 45 other people, or a wedding where my spouse has dragged me to her side of the family. Right. Well, I have no control anymore. I may or may not hit it off with people. I may strike up a conversation. I may not. I may stand there like some bump on a log person, just once again, all by myself. and I have no control. Fourth grade teachers have control, lawyers have control, financial executives and leaders have control, but small talk and conversation at social events, we have no control.
Okay. I don't know if there's a hard and fast rule, a definition, but you've written an entire book on this topic. So what is small talk? I know I can kind of envision it, and we just talked about these social gatherings, but I mean, literally, I could go to the social gathering and, I've done this before. I'll say to my wife or to a buddy, hey, I'll go stand in the drink line and then just look at, now phones are great because you can just stare at your phone the whole time.
You're so bad, Daniel.
I know.
Really,
it's horrible.
Really.
Well, when I talk, it's generally the former me, before I, read books like yours and other professional growth kind of books and things like that. But what is small talk, though? How do you define it?
I define it as the appetizer for any relationship. So if you think about any relationship that you have, whether it be professional, social, or romantic, it either started with small talk. If it's a solid relationship, a continued relationship, it either started with small talk, or it is possible that it started with, let's say, a negotiation or a provision of a service or just some kind of business conversation, a date where it's a blind date. Mm-hmm. But if the small talk isn't introduced, that ingredient, it will not develop into a relationship. So it's even with now, not that I'm have any experience with this, Daniel, but even with the apps like Tinder and all that, that is that's big talk. But if you don't introduce the small talk, you will never connect with chemistry-wise with that person on the other side of the screen. And the same goes for colleagues that we work with and or people that we work for. If we don't introduce the small talk, sure, we may hold on to our jobs. There's no doubt about it. We may be great at our jobs, but do we develop the relationship? And relationships matter in the workplace as well as outside, just to foster not only camaraderie, but to grow an organization or a family for that matter. Yes,
and you have piqued my interest. I've always thought of the term small talk. You just introduced big talk. So what is big talk?
Big talk to me is, and I actually have a book, The Fine Art of the Big Talk. But big talk to me is the meeting, the negotiation, the delivering of feedback, the interviewing of the candidate. And I do say this as far as small talk is, if you can put a picture frame around that business conversation, around the big talk, even when you think about it, if you're going to talk to your child. You mentioned that you have a daughter who goes to university outside of the state.
Right.
Okay. I don't know what your phone calls are like, but I have children that are adults, and the phone is a hard thing.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
And they are not big phone talkers.
No.
Okay. So there are ways that I've used, even with my sons, and you didn't mention you have a son.
Okay.
Men are, sorry to say this, but I have found it much more difficult. But you frame these conversations with not how schoolhouse work. There's better ways to develop the small talk with your own child and your spouse, for that matter.
Oh my gosh.
Which I'm not saying that we need to do it all the time or put that much energy into it. But when your child lives away, when your spouse and you are busy, and you want to maintain a connected relationship, not just a marriage. And the same thing goes at work. Then small talk is important. And I don't mean just about the weather and sports. Small talk is just getting to find out what's really going on for you today, or what you're looking forward to, or how you came up with that idea. That's what small talk is.
Okay. So give us some examples, because you had a great presentation in San Diego recently for our financial conference.
Thank you.
And you broke us up into groups where we got outside of that mundane type of small talk. I don't know if you have a term for it, where it's just going nowhere, where it's, well, how was the weather? These sort of dead-end questions and conversations. Elaborate on that, because I want to refer to it in the correct terms. So what do you call that when it's going nowhere?
If it's really going nowhere, really, then I say exit. Okay, and we can talk about that in a moment if you'd like.
Let's do that.
But what you described is a mundane conversation, and that is why I think people knock small talk. And I was I was the first person to knock small talk. What a waste of saliva.
Right.
Who would, I mean, really, an engineer
Right.
who got straight A's? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The problem is that mundane conversations, most of the time, are because people aren't investing energy into them. And by that I mean, for instance, if you said to me, how are you doing today, Deborah? I have
Right.
an option. I can be a lazy, which is my nature, is to be lazy, especially in conversations, say, pretty good, how about you?
Right.
That's a mundane conversation. And then I'm going to say, and how about you? And you're going to say, well, pretty good. And how's your daughter? Good. And how are your kids? Good. And I mean, it's exhausting. We've gotten nowhere, and it is mundane.
Right.
But if instead, for instance, you said to me, so how's it going? And I said, well, it's great. Since I saw you in San Diego, I've been to Alabama for work. No, yeah, and Chicago. So
Yeah.
I'm just glad to be home today. Now,
Right.
if you are interested in what I was doing in Alabama and or Chicago, you will ask me. If not, that's fine too.
Right.
On the other hand, I'm going to show you enough energy to say to you, so I've never met you. Tell me about I know of you because you reached out to me, but tell me about what your role is. Tell me how you got here. When I walked in, and everyone listening knows this, does Daniel sound like he's from Denver, Colorado? No, he does not. Because and it's easy in Colorado to spot somebody with what I call an accent, and he's got one, and I'll leave it at that. But it's up to me to show a genuine interest and find out. But I did learn things from you just by just asking you about where you were from, because the free information I had was free information about your behavior. I mean, there's all kinds of sources of free information. One is behavior.
Yeah.
In your case, your behavior says you're not from Colorado.
Okay.
You disclosed that you had a daughter.
Right.
Okay. It wasn't until we started talking just now, when you said, when we put an invitation with a magnet on a refrigerator, which really made you sound old-fashioned, by the way.
It did.
Okay. Because a lot of us we have stainless steel appliances now. But okay, I'm glad for you to still have a metal one.
That's right.
We use the word we.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, if we were still really chatting in real life and me not being interviewed, I would have said, who's we?
Yeah. Because
I still wasn't sure. But then you said she.
Yeah.
So now I know you have a wife.
Okay.
So then I went, how did you two meet? Everybody's got a story, right?
Right.
And obviously she's not from here because you said you moved here with a 2-year-old. So
That's
I could go on, but here's the point. It's a mundane conversation if both of us don't put energy into it. Now, I could be the only one putting energy into it. I mean, we go out there, we go to a cocktail party, I show an interest in people and they don't show an interest in me, and that is, I do exit them. Now, if it's my client, then I show a lot of interest in them and just leave it at that.
Right.
But that's not going to be my new girlfriend.
Right.
That's not going to be somebody I hang with. If I meet a person at a party like that, I'm not issuing an invitation, let's get together again.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So it takes a lot of energy, but it brings us great things in life. Like, if we had a chance to talk, I would have shared, I messed up the school your daughter goes to, so I'm not going to mention it. But, I have a son that blah, blah, blah. I went out there and I would tell you about that.
Right.
And we could be friends.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So, or you could be a client, or you already are, basically. Yeah. But there's so much we can learn from other people and have fun. And if somebody is boring us to tears, I say, let's get away.
Right.
Life is too short.
So we're at the Punch Bowl at one of these parties.
Right.
It's the happy hour at the MGMA event. We're getting bored to tears by someone that we've met there.
Right.
For whatever reason. What is a graceful exit? How do you do that?
There's a couple. One of my favorites is this. It's a white flag. It's what they use in car racing. Car racing's on everybody's mind right now. Well, they wave a white flag to the drivers. They know there's one more lap, and then this is over.
Okay.
And just like when you're going to say to me at some point, well, my last question for you today is, or we have time for one last question. That means this is almost over. Well, I'm going to do the same thing in real life to people. I'm going to say, wow, your vacation sounded great. In a moment, I need to make sure I get over there. I see Mary Ann's over there, and I don't want her to think I blew her off or didn't get over to say hi.
Right.
But before I go, what would you say the highlight was of your trip? You've bored me now for 8 to 12 minutes about your trip, or you've been bragging about your trip, which is even worse. Or I may just need to get with Marianne because I don't want Marianne to think I'm a snob. And
Okay.
everybody, don't forget that, because we often let people hold us hostage. And what we don't realize is if we don't get around to say hello to other people, especially if you are in leadership, but also just at church or synagogue,
Right.
if you don't get over to say hello, people either think you don't like them, or you're just too cool for school.
Yeah.
And shy people are often tagged as people that are snobs, and we're not snobs.
Right.
We just don't have the confidence to take the risk to walk up because we don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my favorites, is to say, wow, your project sounds challenging. I'm sorry you lost. You sounds like you lost 2 people on board and you're just way behind. Now they've gone on and on. I'm going to take off in a minute myself because I have a deadline. But before I go, what do you see happening down the pipeline for you?
Okay.
I'll let you know I'm going to be going back to my office. I have a deadline. Now, if you're one of those people that can't stop, you just can't stop yourself
Right.
because you have to brag about your child for 500 hours, and I just cannot take that. I really can't. Then I'll just say, like I said, I need to go.
Right.
And I just won't let you hold me hostage.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're my mother-in-law, right? Or somebody that's near and dear to my heart and,
Right.
doesn't know any better. But sometimes I just think that's one exit strategy. It won't always work because people are monopolizers and love to be in the spotlight. Another one I caution people about is most of us say, Daniel, I need to wrap this up in a couple minutes because I have an appointment. Okay? So we get up to go. I cut this interview short. I need to go.
Yep.
And James says to me, so Deborah, tell me about your da-da-da-da. And I answer him.
Right.
But I just told you I needed to go. So if you say you need to do something, you need to do it.
Right.
I need to go. If I
Yeah.
say I need coffee, I need to go get coffee. Even if I see my girlfriend over there at this party, if I say I need some coffee, I mean, these cocktails, I'm just not ready for cocktails
Right.
yet. I need to get a cup of coffee. And on my way to coffee, I run into Joanne. Joanne, how have you been? You see me not getting a cup of coffee.
Right.
I've really burned a bridge, and I
Yeah.
should not do that at all.
Okay. So I've noticed that there's some programming in our minds. It's the thing when you see somebody say, hey, Deborah, how you doing? And I heard you speak in San Diego. I've brought it up a couple of times. You said don't do that. And yet, when I got back into the office at MGMA, I walked past like 3 people and said it and just kept walking and just going right past them. Like, I don't really want to know what you're doing. But
that, I don't think I said don't do it.
Well,
I said don't do it if you're trying to cultivate a connection.
Correct.
But do it if you need to go. It's okay. I think, did we mention at that program? I never remember. I make it. You can
Right.
see I don't use notes. I have no PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So I never remember what I said at one versus the other.
Sure.
But I don't. If I talked about Larry David.
You did. I wanted to ask you about that.
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So those listening, if you're familiar with Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm, he coined a phrase. He is opposed to, quote, the stop and chat, unquote. So he basically referencing what you just talked about,
Right.
Daniel. We are not obligated just because you're going one way and I'm going the other way and I say, how you doing, Daniel? And you say, pretty good. How about you? We can keep going.
Yes.
I got to go. I got work to do. I don't have time for chatting. On the other hand, you pretend you work for me, Daniel.
Okay.
And we're sitting at a meeting. We're waiting for Charlie to get here, okay? And Charlie's either late or we're early, and I need to try to cultivate a connection with you.
Okay.
So if I say, how's it been going? Let's pretend I start that
Okay.
way. You say, pretty good. I'll then dig in deeper and say,
Okay.
so what's new on your plate since the last time we talked?
Okay.
I'll let you know I really meant, how have you been doing?
Right.
Because I don't want to sit here and plan my device. That would be ridiculous
Right.
and rude. But plus, this is a great opportunity to get to know you better. We
Right.
work together. Plus, I don't want this awkward, horrible moment when we're just sitting here with nothing to talk about.
Right.
How many I endured that until I learned these skills. Forget researching them to present them as a keynote speaker. I don't know how many awkward dates, job interviews, walking down the hall was, in my case, mostly some man that was double my age. That it was the longest hall in the world. Like nobody was talking.
Right.
And of course, I felt it was up to him, or if it had been a her,
Right.
to make me feel comfortable. But they never did.
Okay.
Now, if I could go back to my 25-year-old self, I would have said to that hiring manager, Tell me about your history with the company.
Yeah.
Or what got you interested in engineering or HR or whatever
Right.
their role was. But I just never thought it was up to me to do that.
Yeah.
But it is always up to me, I believe.
Why is that?
I believe it's up to me to assume the burden of other people's comfort in conversation, unless they're a jerk or an abuser or something
Okay.
horrible. But I always now assume the burden of coming up with things to talk about, of showing an interest, of playing the conversation game, everything I can do so that when you're with me, you are comfortable. I mean, even today, I wasn't gonna. I didn't know who was who. Obviously, there's a person here who's running the show here, technically named James, but I looked right at him and just said, and I shook his hand, and then I asked him about him.
Yeah.
It's up to me to assume that burden. I'm not going to treat him like, oh, you're not the guy that called me, so you're just chopped liver today. I'm not going to show you. He's a person, right?
James is a person.
He's a person. But sometimes we don't treat people like people. We just if they start a conversation with me, that would be okay.
Right.
So assuming the burden is making people feel comfortable at a table of 8, one-on-one, at a party, and that's not being with your spouse and clinging to her or him or them. And it's not being with your girlfriend and clinging to her, like that would be me, and not talking to the other people at the table because I'm so risk adverse or because it's so much easier to talk to her. But how did I meet her? Oh, let's look back. How do we meet most people? Well, we do in school. That's for sure.
Okay.
But still, I think small talk's involved. What do you think of the teacher? How'd you do on the exam? This lab project, can you help me out? That's how it starts, with that appetizer. And then they became our friends. But now we're not in school anymore.
Okay.
We're either at work, right?
Right.
So how do we make friends and build connections? It's up to us to assume that burden.
Yeah.
To do that.
One of the things you brought up at your keynote was about, well, I'll use a term, putting your foot in your mouth, you know, because you used an example because you have these trained skills where you pay attention when you meet somebody, and then you used an example. Maybe you met them at a dinner party, and then you see them on the slopes here in Colorado a year later. You remembered what they said, and you went, how's that job at XYZ company? And he goes, well, I got fired. You know, so how do you avoid putting your foot in your mouth when you do see someone maybe a couple of times a year, and you do want to really use those skills like, hey, I was really paying attention when you told me you had these 2 kids or that you were married and you might not be anymore. So, you know, a lot of things could happen in between when you last saw them. So tell us about that.
Yeah, you do not want to say to somebody, how's it going at Boeing? And you don't want to be a whistleblower these days, I'll tell you. It's not even funny. It's so scary. So instead, unless you had a name tag on, if we were at a meeting, obviously, within the organization. But outside of that, I just like to launch conversations where I don't put my foot in my mouth, but also just to help launch it better is to say, catch me up, what's new with work since the last time I saw you, or bring me up to date on work, or what's new with work. If I want to do the professional thing. Now, with the I would not ask, you're a great example of this, Daniel. If I'm lucky enough to see you again, and I may see you again, right?
We
may see each other
paths,
again, right? I'm not going to ask you how's your daughter doing at college. Okay. Do you know why? You don't know why because it hasn't happened to you, but it happened to me, so I know why. I'm going to say, catch me up on your daughter. I'm going to remember you have a daughter. Bring me up to date. What's new with your daughter since we last talked, and then you'll tell me, she's maybe a junior or a senior whenever I would be lucky enough to see you again. But it launches a better conversation because if I say what's new with your daughter, you'll say, oh, she's decided to pick a major and da-da-da. If I say, how's your daughter, you'll say, good. How are you doing? So bring me up to date, what's new in your life, catch me up on your family, bring me up to date on your family, bring me up to date on the kids, what's new with your summer plans. Not like, how's your summer going? What's new with your summer plans? Something like that. What are you looking forward to for Mother's Day? I mean, you just told me, now that I know you're married. Okay? Because I don't know about your mom, right? You don't know about mine. Okay, but I do know you're married, and I do know she's a mother. Because so I would say, what what have you got going on for Mother's Day?
Yeah.
Right? Bring me up to
I
date
think
on.
we're going to go to the spa.
Oh, you are really?
We'll take her to a nail salon, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
that's nice. Will you do it with her?
We get to go
My
too,
husband
yeah.
won't
so
do it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He won't do that. He won't go and get. I said you should get a pedicure.
Yeah.
See how we're see.
It's wonderful.
See, that's small talk.
I know.
I told him it's wonderful, Steve. But he's just one. He's a little older than you. Dan. I think he's from old school.
Okay. Well, I'm still got the magnet on the fridge, so.
Oh yeah, you're right about that. But both of my son-in-laws, they get pedicures. So,
yeah.
I don't know, good for them.
It's a nice thing. So, so I don't know what all you have in this book. You just shared it with me, gave me my very own autographed copy.
I did.
I will treasure it, and I will read it because I am a total book nerd.
Oh, thank you
I'm in
very
2
much.
book clubs.
You are?
Oh, yeah.
I'm in 2 book clubs.
Oh.
Wow, see?
I don't
We
think
have
they're
so
the
much to
same-
talk to
yeah.
about. Tell me about your book clubs, or we don't want to hear that for MGMA.
No, they're both through MGMA. One is for MGMA employees.
Wow.
And so
Do they read fiction or nonfiction or
we
both?
have stayed almost exclusively with nonfiction. We did read The Alchemist, which is,
Right.
it's
Right.
fictional. I mean, it's a
It's
parable.
fiction.
Yeah.
Right.
Other than that, they're mostly professional growth type of things. Some memoirs. We read Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. That got some.
I heard that was a great book. I heard the Audible version was really
it's
a
pretty
gas.
wonderful. Yeah.
I'll have to listen to that.
Yeah, and
haven't done
then
that.
also we have just started back in January. We started a book club for MGMA members. So I host
that's
that as
great.
well, and that has been incredible. And I hope some of y'all are listening. So I've actually had a couple of the book club members own the podcast, so we've talked about the books.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Well, I have a book to recommend to either one of those book clubs of yours. It's nonfiction.
Is it The Fine
and
Art
it's
of
brand
Small
new.
Talk?
Yeah, right. That would be great. I've been to book clubs many times. I've been
Yeah.
invited. It's been great.
Oh, that's
actually.
cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
that
is.
would be a neat thing to do.
It is cool
yeah.
because the book clubs, the one book club I'm in is we read mostly fiction,
Okay.
and it's all women. I've been in it for 38 years.
Oh, my
Can you
gosh.
imagine?
That's
So there's a
incredible.
lot of history there because we don't let new members in. We're
What's
so bad.
Give me an example. What's been a favorite book of this 38-year book club?
So many. Actually, it was my pick this month, and we are reading. It's very grim. The Lovers. It's hard for me because I read on Kindle, but
Okay.
The Lovers, either of Auschwitz or in Auschwitz. But it's a true story, without giving anything away, that I didn't know before I started the book, of 2 people that meet in Auschwitz that sort of fall in love in the camp, that get are released and find their way to different parts of the world and meet up when they're 70 years old.
That's incredible.
Can you imagine? I'm not there to the 70-year-old part.
Okay.
But yes, pretty incredible. But I'm in a couples book club too.
Okay.
So we read a lot more nonfiction because it just serves. But I've read some great books. But I just read Barbara Streisand's memoir, which is I'm not recommending. It's 900 pages, and I grew weary a lot of times. She talks too much, but I learned a lot. But she reminded me of the book, The Prince of Tides.
Yeah.
That just was one of my
it's beautiful.
favorite fiction books of all time. But I have many. I'm a big reader. It's my big thing.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, we huge Pat Conroy fan.
Right.
I actually have a signed copy of
do?
The Prince of Tides. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah,
jealous.
I'm bragging. See, you're gonna walk.
So
you're gonna wave a white
Well, you're
flag.
a Southerner. No, I could talk about
Right.
books are my favorite thing actually
Yeah.
in my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about what your listening audience would say, but I am an introvert. I was very shy,
Mm-hmm.
and I really was, I guess, lonely. I didn't even, whether I knew it or not. Books were my friends.
Yeah.
And I've been Arapahoe Library District here. They've used me as one of their leaders when they raise tax. They've had 2 ambassadors. I'm one of them. Libraries are my favorite thing in the whole world.
That is so
cool.
cool.
And because books help me, I think, be happy, find a happiness in life. And they still do. I read every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, I'm glad to meet you, a fellow reader.
It is good to find and meet fellow readers, and I love the idea that you suggested. I will suggest your book as a future.
That'd be great.
And
I'll get him autographed for you.
No, we'll get you to
Right
join
here in
our.
Colorado.
We do a
I would
Zoom
love
call.
To. I would do that for
yeah,
sure.
I think that could be really cool.
Oh, it would be so fun.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Okay.
I mean, actually, you know what the book is? What's it? It's a huge New York Times bestseller now by Hannah about the Vietnam War nurses.
Okay.
What is that?
I don't know.
But that's the one I'm going to start it tomorrow. I bet I'll finish this one today.
Okay, fantastic. So before we leave,
oh yeah, see,
see, I'm learning. No, I did want to ask you about your book, because before we hit record here, you were telling me that you wrote the book around 20 years ago or so, and then you or maybe your publishers were looking through the book, said, okay, there's some things maybe to update culturally and otherwise, digitally, technologically, that have changed over the last 20 years or so. So tell us about that. What are some of the most interesting updates that you felt like you needed to make to this book to bring it to an audience today?
Well, 2 chapters were added that I think are really important. One is political conversation, how to have one or how to back off of one. Because there's so much conflict involved and tension now. So there's a whole chapter on that.
Just Cliff's Notes version.
Let me tell you, one of my favorite expressions that that I recommend in the book. It's not like I'm a rocket scientist and figured this out. I've used it many times, and so I recommend it to others. And that's if you and I disagree, to say to you, help me understand.
Yeah.
Now, if you in any way got abusive or dictatorial, then I would exit the conversation.
Sure.
But help me understand if I'm really a good person or try to use my intellect, I'm going to really try to understand.
Right.
Why you feel so strongly about that. And maybe you had a life experience. Maybe obviously we come from different parts of the world. All that.
Right.
So that's one of so all ideas like that. And then the other chapter is about managing conversation when there's loss. So that could be everything from a job loss, but to someone who has a person in their life that is sick or has died. Because I just, as recently as last night, I texted my friend whose son died almost 10 years ago now. And, it was his birthday, May 1st, sorry. And so I always call her the day before, and she always says, you're the only one that calls. And to say, well, let's talk about some things about Andrew. Let's talk about some memories of Andrew. What's one of your favorites? And so that's just an example of, and if somebody doesn't want to talk about their loss or their cancer or that they didn't get into that school, then they'll say, I'm not in a place where I can talk about that today, or I'm just not ready. But the point is to not ignore conversation because we don't know what to say. So I've given a list of things to say to people who have lost a job, but to not try to solve their problem. Can I help you? Can I see your resume? Oh, that subject, this is just too long. No, people aren't asking for advice. People, if you'd like some help, let me know. Wow, this looks great. If there's anything I can do, let me know. And not to offer unsolicited advice to people. Oh, my mother died, so I know. Well, no, you don't know what it's like for this other person to lose their mother. You have no idea. Everybody's different.
Right.
So that's those 2 main chapters, and then, as I told you earlier. A little too many John Elway references because he was quite the hero at that time. I don't think you were here yet in Colorado, but it was insanity.
Right.
And then video stores, and then my gender references. There wasn't anything inappropriate about them, but they weren't as inclusive as they should have been. And now I'm glad to say that they are. Yeah. And everything I do is, hopefully.
Yeah. Last question about the book then. It's small talk, but do you get into small communication? Because you and I were both talking about having kids, and I've often found that if I want to get in touch with my daughter is to text her rather than give her a phone call. And so do you get into all the other forms of communication, or do you stay mostly with talking?
Mostly with talking, except to use text as a way to launch in, to say, let's set up a time to talk on the phone. We have all forgotten that that this device functions as a phone. We instead just use it to say, I'd like to get together on the phone. Would Thursday work for you? I do that, or face-to-face, of course. I do that all the time. I think texting is a great tool, but I think it's meant to tell you I'm late, to set up an appointment, but not to converse. On the other hand, I play Wordle with my son that lives in New York City every day, and I did that purposely, let me tell you that. And I did it because I get a phone call with him once a week, for sure, that's lengthy and in-depth, and it's wonderful. And sometimes if something's coming up. But with Wordle, what I've managed to do with him, because I said, Jared, will you play Wordle with me? And because I knew he played. And he said, sure, Mom. And he didn't say it so excitedly. So, like, today all I said was, Happy Monday. Here's my score. Right. But on yesterday I said, so how was your weekend? What'd you do? And punched in my score. And I got an answer.
Nice.
We went out for drinks on Friday and Saturday. And I didn't put that Jared example because that literally just happened. The Wordle thing was not happening yet when I rewrote this book.
Right.
What a wonderful way to stay in touch.
It is.
Every single day with my boy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome.
That's incredible. Well, Deborah Fine, I want to thank you for not only speaking at the financial conference recently, but also joining me here in studio for the MGMA Insights podcast.
It was my pleasure. I knew I'd be happy to be face-to-face. I knew I was going to be a lazy girl to say, no, we can do Zoom. Because I knew, that I have to put on an outfit.
Yeah.
And do my makeup and everything. But I'm so glad because you are just a delightful person to talk to and a lover of books.
That is true. I am that.
I love that.
All right. Well,
Thanks.
Thank all of you for listening to the podcast. And what I'm going to do in the episode show notes is put a direct link to Deborah's book and also to her website, and it's deborahfine.com. So thanks again, everyone, for being podcast listeners.